Hello, everyone, and welcome back into this episode of the Giant Take podcast with none other than the only Giant Take Hall of Famer, Justin Penik from Talkin Giants and JM Football. Justin, good to see you again. Last time we saw you in person, at least, I think, was during the training camp days of open training camp. How are you doing since then? It's been a while. It's been a rough Giants season since then.
It has been a rough Giants season since then. We certainly had... I don't even know if it was optimism, but it was just like, well, it won't be this bad. And lo and behold, it is this bad. Of course, Bobby and I talk about this all the time, like kind of just like off air and whatever. We're like, there's NFL teams, like look at the Raiders, for example. The Raiders are in a very, very bad spot, and they're a bad football team. But even the Raiders will have a game or two where they score like 30 points and like a high offensive output game. The Giants just don't have that, man. There's not even like an outlier game where you can like hang your hat on a little bit. It's bad. And every long-term conversation you have about them is like life or death. Is Schoen gone? Is Daboll gone? What are they going to do at quarterback? What are they going to do with this? What are they going to do with that? There's a lot of conversations that are happening right now, very centered around a few things, but they're very, very important with this New York Football Giant team. So I love to always hop on with you guys. I'm doing well.
Yeah, and just peeking at your Twitter a little bit before we're recording later in the day, I saw there was a guy, I think he goes by the name Sexy Dexy, and
yeah,
I just want to know, you're meeting with us on the same day you met with him. Who is the person you were more excited to talk to? Like, where is it us? Is it him? Like,
it's you guys. It's you guys.
Okay.
Athletes are boring. They're boring. Dex is a good dude. I will say that. Hey, it was a good event. Campbell's Chunky Noodle Soup. We all see the commercials growing up, and they do a lot of great work. The Giants are leading the league in sacks, and they're leading the league in sack rate. They're the only team with the double-digit sack rate so far this year. So they're donating a lot of food and stuff like that for every sack of the NFL season. So Dex is a good guy. His wife was there too. So it was a good event, and he really cares about it. He takes it personally. So it was a good event. But no, you guys, we've been friends. We've been buds for a couple of years now. So athletes, like, you ask them, I'll even tell you, one of the questions that I asked him was, what's the toughest offensive lineman or the toughest team that you faced? And he's like, the Giants. I'm like, come on, man. Like, that's not true.
Be honest.
That's not true. You're going to tell me Cade Mays, who, who's the practice squad guy? It's the Giants O-line is the toughest O-line that you've gone up against. So, I don't know, man. The athletes, they can be a little boring, but Dex is a good dude, and I was happy to talk with him. I was thankful that the Campbell's people invited me over. But no, you guys are a lot more fun.
Hey, we appreciate that. We thank you, obviously, for taking the time to join us in your busy schedule run around with Jomboy Media. I want to ask you, as we have gotten to this point finally, and it feels like it took forever, but luckily we have you on just a couple of days after the New York Giants have officially benched Daniel Jones. So, obviously we'll have some kind of sub-bullets based on this, but just your thoughts on the benching of Daniel Jones now throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, they needed to. I genuinely do think that in the Giants building right now, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, all the offensive coaches, I do think that they think that Daniel Jones gives them the best chance to win, and part of me thinks that that's true as well, but I want to see something different. The fans need to see something different. I want to see something different. Brian Daboll defines Tommy DeVito as like a spark, which I think that is true in a sense. I just want to see a different type of football and a different type of quarterbacking out there besides Daniel Jones, because we know what Daniel Jones is, and I think after 2022, and he didn't take that extra step in 2023 in the second year of Brian Daboll's system, and then even especially this year with the offensive line improving and the receivers getting better. We know the type of quarterback that he is. He's not going to be a quarterback that's going to push the ball down the field. He's going to be a quarterback that's going to largely throw to his first read. He's going to have trouble reading a defense, post snap. and what's going on. He's going to rely on quick game. He's going to rely on his legs. So we know that that's the type of quarterback that he is. Even if he does give the Giants the best chance to win, I feel like the fans, we need to see something different. And number two, they needed to bench him with the injury clause because I'm on the fence, but I probably lean more towards that I would like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll to stay right now. But if they somehow got on the hook for that extra, however, what is it, $23 million or however much money they would have owed Daniel Jones with the injury clause guarantee, I would have been full on get these guys out because they had every chance to bench Daniel Jones. And now there's going to be even more money on the Giants cap when Daniel Jones isn't even part of the future plans. So that injury guarantee does force your hand on benching him. And, in terms of going to Tommy DeVito, if Drew Lock has been that bad and Drew Lock has not been the $5 million investment that they thought they were getting, maybe they thought they were getting a little bit of Eagles game, like Eagles versus Seahawks last year, that Monday Night Football game where Drew Lock looked pretty solid. Maybe the Giants thought they were getting that. I think from what we all saw in camp, we were all there. And then even in the preseason action and then the action that he did get against the Eagles towards the fourth quarter, it was bad. It wasn't just bad. It was really, really bad. It was like inoperable bad. And it was worse than Daniel Jones. Even though Daniel Jones was guiding the 30-second scoring offense, Drew Lock has performed worse than Daniel Jones in a Giants uniform, whether that be in practice or preseason so far this year, which is tough to say. So I think DeVito, going with him the final 7 games of the year, it will provide a spark, sure. But I also think having Tommy DeVito as the face of whatever happens through the final 7 games of the season, having him as the face is much better than having Drew Lock or Daniel Jones as the face of that. Whether it's winning, okay, interesting, or whether it's losing, Tommy DeVito, it's a much better face to have on that rather than the other two.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me when I'm thinking about this whole situation is I see, you pay Drew Lock $5 million. You know that this situation, I mean, unless Joe Schoen is not a capable GM, there has to be something in his mind that this is a possibility, that Daniel Jones continues to be bad. We get to this point in the season, we get to after the bye, the Giants are 2-8 or whatever it's going to be, and that they're going to need to bench him and they're going to need someone to play instead of Daniel Jones, or he might get injured earlier in the season. Who knows? But to bring in someone who is not even able to beat out Tommy DeVito and pay them $5 million, and this is your backup, this is your plan B, or even your plan 1B, and for that to not work out and have to go back to, I guess, old reliable Tommy DeVito, it's another sign of incompetence in terms of what Joe Schoen has done and some of the mistakes he's made, and more of a, I guess, reason why maybe potentially he is on the hook or potentially on the edge of losing his job, because it's these smaller mistakes, this I think lack of planning in certain areas that has really hurt the Giants, whether that's the offensive line last season, whether that's the tackle spot, the backup tackle spot, which has been consistently neglected. It's these small little things that, pop up and consistently pop up that Joe Schoen hasn't been able to deal with properly. And I agree with you. DeVito, it's great for the fans. Obviously, people love him. It'll help them from a PR standpoint, in addition to potentially maybe a little bit better on the field. But it screams incompetence all around to me.
No, I mean, Alex, I think that's a good point where it's a misevaluation. That's what it is that they thought they were going to get something, and instead they got something different, and the result has been different. So, we were all summer in training camp, and even through after they made the signing, and the Seahawks GM says whatever he has to say about, we wanted Drew Lock back, but he went to New York because he thinks that he has the opportunity to compete or even eventually play. And Drew Lock probably signed with the Giants with the full-on intention that they are going to eventually bench Daniel Jones, whether that be for performance reasons or the injury clause. And it turns out, I guess it was both in this case, right? Like Drew Lock signed with the Giants for this exact opportunity, but it didn't work out. And it is a misevaluation where over the summer, that Drew Lock is the backup. He is the backup quarterback. We kind of got that confirmation. And Tommy DeVito's name kind of phased out a little bit. Art Stapleton is writing some articles over the summer too about how, Tommy DeVito's a little bit of a forgotten guy, and, he's still here, and, Tommy DeVito would be willing to maybe even go somewhere else if he gets cut from the Giants. So those conversations kind of were happening as he was being phased out. And now all of a sudden, $5 million guaranteed to Drew Lock later, and he's had a bad year, practice, preseason, whatever game action he's had. Tommy DeVito's now starting, and that is, you could have just came into the season with Tommy DeVito as your backup, not spend that $5 million, and maybe you go out and you get another defensive tackle too. Maybe that's the difference between bringing a guy like Sean Robinson back. Maybe that's the difference between getting depth on the offensive line in terms of a swing tackle, like you said. So it's a good point. I kind of am so numb to whatever quarterback decisions that the Giants have made to, like, the criticism is Daniel Jones and they need to find a new one. But I still think it's good. You bring up a good point about that misevaluation piece of it of Drew Lock.
So obviously that decision being on Brian Daboll, believing that Drew Lock just is not the guy and continuing to feel that way. Justin, you also mentioned earlier how if they didn't decide with the injury clause to bench Daniel Jones, that is an immediate get out, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, what are we doing here? So now I ask you, these are going to be 7 long and quite possibly even more miserable games with a backup quarterback in Tommy DeVito playing. All credit to him. I know he had that 3-game winning streak, and most of the community, I would say, that are Giants fans does have a spot in their heart for Tommy DeVito, the hometown hero. But with that being said, do you really think that at the end of the day, these 7 games matter to the future of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen with the Giants? Because to me, personally, I think these guys are locked in to stay with this team. That's my opinion. I think regardless of how it goes, just because of the situation that we're in, by putting in Tommy DeVito, I feel like it kind of locks into ownership that, there's nothing really they can do right now. So I just want to get your thoughts on that and the future of those 2 guys.
No, and this is kind of the same conversation that we had last year with Shane and Daboll too. These games do matter. Like they have to matter. They matter to John Mara. The more games that you lose, the more seats that are going to be empty at MetLife Stadium when it comes down to late December or early January. That's the stuff that matters to John Mara. And it is now the task of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll to not just, try and find a way to win games, but also try and find a way to not make this worse. Because right now, the Giants are already of the national laughingstock with the whole Saquon Barkley thing, which even if logic says the Giants made the right decision, people are now comparing the $5 million of Drew Lock and the $2 or $3 million that Saquon Barkley's getting. It's do you know how backloading contracts works? But none of that matters, though. The logic of if that makes sense or if it doesn't make sense, if the criticism makes sense or not, it doesn't matter. It's not valid because that's the national story. The national story is the Giants chose Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley, and now Saquon Barkley is having an Offensive Player of the Year type of season with the Philadelphia Eagles. That is the job now of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll through these final 7 games. If they keep losing, if they keep getting embarrassed, and if seats are empty at MetLife and the Giants become more of that laughingstock, I do think that as of now that Shane is safe, that Daboll's safe, but 7 games is a long time. We were saying the same thing about Joe Judge at the end of the 2021 season. I think he's safe. You got to give him a little bit more time, and then everything happens, and the narrative and the story changes. So we'll see. These 7 games do matter. They matter for this rookie class that Joe Schoen is preaching to the choir about how this rookie class is really, really good. He defended his first 2 draft classes when the beat pressed on him, but I don't feel like in his press conference that he had, his bye-week press conference last week, I don't really feel like he went out of his way to defend the 2022 and 2023 draft classes. What he did do is he did go out of his way to preach the 2024 draft class. So it's big for the development of that. Can Tyron Tracy continue to be an RB1? Can Malik Neighbors clean up some effort stuff? Can he catch the football? Can his heart stay in it? Can Theo Johnson continue to develop? Can Tyler Nubin continue to develop? Can he get his hands on a football? So there's a lot of things that this current draft class has to prove. Deonte Banks, I feel like, needs to continue to get better. Same thing with JMS. Is Jalen Hyatt going to get involved down the stretch? So there are, even though it's not sexy questions, through these final 7 games, if any of these guys start to show promise, that's only going to help Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen's case of we deserve to stick around. We deserve to stay here. Look, we even made the change at quarterback, and it helped out XYZ guys develop and further come along.
I want to ask kind of a silly question here before you go, Alex. Is just so now in back-to-back seasons, what you're saying to me, and I know you mentioned a bunch of different players, but at the end of the day, if you look at it, it could be the guy in Tommy DeVito that will help keep the jobs of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen on this team. Or am I wrong? Am I reading it like?
No, I think anybody.
Okay.
Yes.
Just because, like, with the 3-game winning streak last year, you can, go to that and say, well, maybe that impressed John Mara and whatever. But
and even seeing how Tyrod played against the Los Angeles Rams and seeing that comeback against the Eagles, where I'm pretty sure that was a game where they benched Tommy DeVito at halftime, and then they had that comeback on Christmas Day. I think Tommy DeVito maybe started that game. But anyway, that I got excited at the end of last year, seeing like, okay, well, whatever happened with Daniel Jones happened with Daniel Jones in 2023, but you saw what he did in 2022, and then you saw what Daboll was able to do with Tyrod Taylor. You saw what Daboll was able to do with Tommy DeVito, who almost had a 20% sack rate behind that offensive line, and go 3-3 with Tommy DeVito, this UDFA quarterback. I got excited for the Giants' future because I'm like, you just saw what Daboll was able to do with these guys and these quarterbacks, and they kept the team fighting. The locker room stayed together. The team kept fighting until the end. And there's questions about that. The cryptic Instagram stuff with Darius Slayton, Bobby Okereke, cutting Nick McCloud. I mean, that is, I will say, that is one thing that I don't know if the $500,000 that you save against the cap, even though the Giants need every cent of it, I don't know if that's worth it, man. Nick McCloud's a locker room guy. Nick McCloud, I think, is kind of a glue guy for could be a glue guy for like a lot of organizations. He went to the 49ers, and I guarantee at some point, if the 49ers go on, if they get back into the hunt of the postseason, I guarantee Nick McCloud is involved somehow. Because I feel like every team needs guys like that, of just like these decent backups that could play in the slot, play in the outside. They're, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And it's a guy that's been around since the start of this regime, that you just picked him up from the Bills practice squad at the 53-man cutdown day in 2022. And then you ask him to take a pay cut, and then he says no. And then he's like, I would rather you just release me. And that's the kind of stuff that doesn't send a good message to the locker room. So how Brian Daboll, and I'm not even going to say Joe Schoen because it's not really Joe Schoen's job, how Brian Daboll can kind of keep this locker room together and playing hard through the final 7 games, that's a huge part of, how John Mara is going to evaluate both of their futures, that being Schoen and Daboll.
I mean, I think we've seen in the past that John Mara is very influenced not only by fan opinion, media opinion, but also inside the locker room opinion. Because after that Joe Judge, QB sneak on 3rd down or whatever, he lost the locker room, he lost the fans, and the media went berserk. And those 3 things, because Judge was pretty much, I mean, go backwards in time to, 3 years ago. Joe Judge, I think everyone thought, was in a very similar situation to Daboll and Schoen right now, where it was like, he's safe unless he does the absolute wildest thing for the remainder of the season. He does the wildest thing and he's gone. And John Mara is very much pushed around by public perception and public, opinion of what's going on with the Giants organization. Yeah. So
the only difference is, Alex, and it feels similar, but at the end of the day, John Mara also has to have in the back of his head that, well, I gave Dave Gettleman 4 years. And also, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, they did make the playoffs. They made the playoffs, and a guy like Dave Gettleman, Joe Judge, Patrick, they never had success like that. So that is something that is very much, I think, at the top in the forefront of John Mara's mind. That even if John Mara may want to move on, which I don't think he does, I think that's one of the main reasons why, he's going to justify it to himself. Well, I gave the other guy 4 years and he was worse. So I feel like I gotta give these guys a little bit of more time too. And and Jordan was on our show today, and he talked about this too. You gotta think about this. Joe Schoen just from a process standpoint, which I think that's the best thing about Joe Schoen, which I guess isn't speaking, which isn't saying too much. But the best part about Joe Schoen is it seems like he goes about the process and being a GM the right way. Like, the how they go about working on the draft and how they go about like the way that they organize their notes and their boards and their scouts and their notes, etc. And the way that Joe Schoen goes about trades and dealing with trades and other GMs, like the trades, I mean, like none of them have been like slam dunk. They've all made sense, and they haven't, even like the Darren Waller trade didn't work, but at the end of the day, it didn't really cost the Giants too much. Like, I would still do that trade to just, try and go for it and give Daniel Jones a weapon in 2023, right? I don't view that as like a huge harm. The thing that I don't like, the two trades I don't like, trading up for Jalen Hyatt and then also trading up for Deontay Banks. Those are the two things I don't like. They don't really see the process in. But overall, like, Joe Schoen has brought technology. He's modernized the Giants building versus Dave Gettleman, for all the jokes that that we made about the whole binders thing. Like the Giants building was behind, and the Giants way of going about things was not modernized. And Joe Schoen has at least modernized the building and brought in different people. So I think that's the part of it where John Mara is willing to wait this out and like, hey, let these guys get a quarterback in the door and let's see what happens, because it's modern, it's different from everything that we've done before. Give them time to see their vision.
I was reading something on Twitter today. I thought it was interesting because obviously you talk about the process, and like Joe Schoen has made it very clear he's very much in the mindset of positional value, right? The reason they let Saquon Barkley go, the reason that he's made certain moves in free agency. But in the draft, they've used 2 second-round picks on traditionally low positional value positions, that being center and also safety with Tyler Nubin.
Well, here's how I'll edit that.
Yeah.
Joe Schoen is a very needs-based GM.
Yes.
Needs-based. And he even acknowledged it. He acknowledged it when media members were kind of like picking on the 2022 draft. He was just kind of saying, well, we just needed like players. We just needed bodies at certain spots. So they kind of just like, they literally went up and down their positional needs board in 2022 and just plucked a guy from like each position. And that's how their 2022 draft went. And it kind of was like in order, like, oh, they really needed a pass rusher. They really needed a tackle. They really needed a right tackle. So they kind of just plucked down the line of positions that they needed. And that's probably the most frustrating, it is the singular most frustrating thing about Joe Schoen right now. It's more frustrating than the quarterback because, quarterback is tough. Quarterback is tough to figure out. And that probably will be the thing at the end of the day that will define Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, is if they get the quarterback right or if they don't get the quarterback right. But we haven't crossed that bridge yet. So we'll see what happens. But the thing that is very frustrating about Joe Schoen is that he has had 3 years outside of the quarterback, 3 years to build a roster. And you don't necessarily feel that the Giants going into 2025 or even it being in 2024 right now, like I don't feel like that 2024 roster is in like a year 3 spot that a regime should be in a year 3 spot. Is it better than 2022? Absolutely. Is this offensive line the best that we've seen in probably a decade? And this probably even includes sans Andrew Thomas. Without Andrew Thomas, they've still performed decently well. Absolutely, all those things are true. But this team doesn't have stars. And you can argue with me all day. Well, I think this guy's a star. I think that guy's a star. I think Brian Burns is a good player. I don't think he's a star. I think the Giants have 2 stars on the team currently. 3 3. Let's say 3. Dexter Lawrence, star, one of the best players in the NFL. Yes, also not drafted by this regime. Andrew Thomas, a star, but a very injured star. Year in and year out, hurt. Not drafted by this regime. Malik Neighbors, star, but rookie. We're dropping the ball a little bit. We have some questions on effort. So there's 3 stars on this team. And that is the main thing that I've learned with JM football over the last two-ish years of doing it now. and that channel and trying to do NFL work is that the best teams have stars and like Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl, we'll use Pro Bowl caliber players as a step down from stars. Pro Bowl caliber players everywhere in every position group and every position room. The Giants don't have that. And every year we overrate rookies, so Joe Schoen is going to hang his hat on this year's rookie class. Like, okay, Tyler Nubin's good, and we like him as a rookie. Is he going to develop into a Pro Bowl player? Maybe. Is Theo Johnson going to develop into a Pro Bowl player? He's nowhere near it right now, but we kind of like him. Tyrone Tracy is probably the closest player that you can maybe seeing to developing into that kind of Pro Bowl player. Malik Neighbors, definitely. But out of the 3 Joe Schoen draft classes, what player are you looking at saying, yeah, that's a Pro Bowl caliber guy outside of Malik Neighbors? There's none. And that is the thing that is most frustrating about Joe Schoen, is that we're 3 years in, and there's Brian Burns, who they acquired, and they're now paying $30 million a year for. There's Brian Burns that Joe Schoen acquired, and Malik Neighbors. And am I missing anybody else that Joe Schoen has acquired that you view as like a somewhat top-ish caliber football player? I don't think so.
No. I mean, you were hoping Thibodeau, but that really hasn't worked out, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he still has it there, but I mean, Deonte Banks, we all had high hopes for, of course, but he's not at that level, clearly.
And that's the shine of the rookie year. If anything, if you look at his next-gen stats, which, again, this is not a sexy thing to do, and the general public is not looking at this, but if you look at his next-gen stats and the player tracking data, he's forcing way more tight window throws this year. His average separation is down by a lot. Like the advanced stuff is better, but he's allowing like around the same like yards per game. I think the only thing that's up is the touchdowns. I think he's allowed more touchdowns this year, but like the completions that he's allowed or the yards per game, all of that is around the same as last year. It's just that Deonte Banks is no longer a rookie, so he doesn't have the rookie shine next to him. He doesn't have the benefit of the doubt of, oh, he'll get better. He's just a young guy. Now he's in the second year, and the shine is kind of worn off. So that's the thing with Banks, is that some of the advanced stuff is actually better, and it's a lot better. Dude just can't make a play on the football. Like I'm very convinced that if Deonte Banks could just turn his head and play half of the balls that come his way, and that he's in position to get a hand on or intercept or get a pass, pass the defense, pass deflected. If he even just did that half the time, he would be beloved by this fan base. But he doesn't do it at all. So,
Justin, we've done something on this show that we have not done before in our 5-6 years of having this podcast, and that was looking into draft prospects in the month of November on an actual episode. So last week during the bye week, we decided to look into some quarterback prospects for the 2025 NFL draft. And I feel like every time we have you on, unfortunately, in the earlier months of draft prep, we come to you and we ask, are there any players that stand out to you in the months of, December, February, January, when probably no other teams, podcasts are looking into that, but we are, of course. So now I ask you in the month of November. We're taking it even a month or two earlier than normal. So if you're thrown off by this one and you don't have anyone down, no problem. But are there any QBs or even a singular quarterback in college right now that stands out to you heading into the draft next year?
Yeah, I'm gonna start my evals the Thanksgiving weekend. Me and the boys are getting in the car early Friday morning, and I'm actually going to be going to Ohio State, Michigan this year, or Michigan, Ohio State. We're going to be getting in the car, so I plan on what I'm going to do is I'm downloading all 22, and I'm starting to watch the quarterbacks this year.
Can I ask you, is that the earliest you've done it, or it's always been that early?
No, this is the earliest that I've ever done anything college related. I need to get a little bit more open. I want to do a little bit more Senior Bowl prep heading into the Senior Bowl this year, and then obviously just because it's very beneficial in our line of work, guys. It's very beneficial to be first to things instead of just waiting and be like, I'm gonna wait to watch this guy because I typically don't want to do it. No, you got to watch these quarterbacks. That's just something that I feel like we have to do as Giants fans this year. You have to have an opinion on these quarterbacks even when it gets to the month of December or January. So I'm excited from some of the things that I'm only going off of some of the things that I've seen on Twitter and just some of the things that, kind of loosely watching college football. I'm excited to watch Shedeur. There's a lot of people that are talking about probably like in terms of the natural, not necessarily athleticism, but the natural arm stuff with quarterbacks. Like kind of the ball just kind of comes out of his hand nice. It comes out of his hands pretty quick. That's the kind of stuff that, that really drew me into Jaden Daniels. Obviously, Caleb's was on another stratosphere of all that. But, Jaden Daniels, the ball came out of his hands very quick. Not comparing the two because I think Jaden Daniels is I'm pretty sure that Jaden Daniels I'm going to view as a much better college prospect than Shedeur Sanders. The thing that worries me about Shedeur Sanders, I am a Nebraska Cornhusker fan. My Nebraska Cornhuskers absolutely kicked the crap out of the Colorado Buffaloes earlier in the year, and that I don't mind from a prospect standpoint. But what I do mind is after the game, there's quotes of Shedeur Sanders throwing his offensive lineman under the bus. I don't love that. You can't. I just don't think as a quarterback you can do that. As a quarterback, everything needs to be I, me, or even saying we. But never you, or them. Everything Eli was, and even Jones, I have to be better. 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 Even if you win the freaking game, you'll hear those guys say that. So I didn't love hearing that out of Shedeur earlier this year, but obviously, we're gonna watch the tape. I feel like Daboll. We're gonna watch the tape right there. Excited for Cam Ward. It seems like he's the biggest X factor, right? Just he can do some of the magic stuff that you're looking for. But a lot of the NFL is, as the NFL continues to turn into too high safeties and trying to limit the big plays, you kind of have to do the little things right just as much as the magic stuff is fun and you can run around and improvise, and how that is so important. And you want a quarterback that can do that, but doing the little stuff is important too, as teams are definitely trying to limit those big plays and stuff like that. So Cam Ward, Shedeur, I think those are the two that I'm going to be watching next week when I start.
Yeah, I think it's interesting now going into this specific draft, right? Because we've now had 2 drafts in a row that the consensus top guy, it's a little early for the Williams Daniels debate, but it looks at least as if Jane Daniels is going to be the top guy in that class. It obviously is going to be that CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young as a pro. How do you kind of look at this now? Because this is a very difficult situation. Because if Daboll and Schoen get this wrong, no matter what, they're gone.
Yeah.
How do you kind of evaluate? Because a lot of these guys don't have, Cam Ward in particular, very kind of all over the place college tape. Shedeur Sanders, there's a lot of uncertainty based on the fact that he hasn't really played for anyone other than his dad. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of assess this class? Because it's a weird class, and sometimes there's not really anyone who's, I think, obvious top guy necessarily. How are you going to kind of look at it? Because with kind of the information in the past that, these obvious guys have not necessarily translated in the NFL in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, we also have to evaluate and assess it as, do I have to take any of these guys?
True.
Do the Giants and that is the thing that worries us the most. What we've been talking about on Talkin Giants, what we've been, what we're going to be asking beat reporters in the offseason. We just asked Jordan this, but it will be the question that we ask everybody. I hope that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have the freedom to take who they want, similar to what they did last year. They looked at Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and J.J. McCarthy. They looked at those 3 guys and they said, you know what? We don't think these guys are worthy of this pick, especially when you have Malik Neighbors on the board. Pretty sure they liked Rome Odunze. Maybe they like some other people, but they passed on those guys. And I think that's good process, because you don't want to force quarterback. But now the question is, well, what's the alternative? Because at least this year you had Daniel Jones, who you were paying $40 million. And they also desperately tried to trade up for Drake May. They wanted to, they were willing to move heaven and earth to move up for Drake May, give up multiple first round picks. And, hey, it may have kind of hurt in the moment, but damn, we would have had Drake May, and maybe he'd be doing some of those. He's doing a little bit of magic stuff for New England with the horrible situation. I have no doubt that he would be doing that here too. But anyway, I'm not hurt. That's the main question for how do you when you assess these quarterbacks, and when maybe I'm going to be watching these guys, and I think Joe Schoen has to be asking this himself this question too. Am I watching these quarterbacks with the intention of the Giants have to take one of these guys, or can I watch these quarterbacks and evaluate these prospects as guys that maybe we can take on the list of Travis Hunter, a corner, and another edge rusher, hypothetically, an offensive lineman, hypothetically, or can we add those guys to the list of players that there's going to be really good players at the top of this draft too? I have no doubt. Giants are going to have a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick. There's going to be a good player there outside of a quarterback that the Giants could possibly take. But are they quarterback or bust? That is the main question. And I guess when you're watching these QBs, do you have to take one of them is basically my main question.
And I think this is also a really weird class just because of the Travis Hunter situation, right? Is he going to be able to play both sides in the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. And personally, if I'm sitting there and I'm the Giants, I think Travis Hunter is by far the best player in college football. I think no team, no matter how desperate you might be for a QB, can look at Travis Hunter and say, nah, let's pass on that guy. I'm interested to see maybe people will do that. But also, you're in a situation, Joe Schoen is, and Brian Daboll, that they, go with the Jacoby Brissett for next year. They win 5 games. They're gone.
They're out.
They're not getting to draft the next quarterback.
They're out.
So they kind of are left with a very difficult situation. Do they care more about the team's well-being or their own jobs personally? And I can't blame them as people for choosing themselves in that situation. I think that's
they're going to. I'm very confident that they're, as of now,
I think they're going to draft a quarterback. I don't see how they don't.
They're going to draft a quarterback. Yeah.
So with that being said, Justin, my last one for you is just for the rest of this season. Is there okay, you know what? Let's just take what I am doing right now out of the picture. I'm just a casual fan, right? Not covering the team on a podcast or anything. Why convince me? Why do I watch these last 7 games? Or maybe even don't. Maybe tell me not to.
Here's why you do it. And this ain't the first rodeo that, especially you guys are younger than me, and I hate to throw that out there because people used to do that to me. You guys, you're a youngin, but I can consider myself a 2-time Super Bowl champion. So, but you two have seen way more losing than any kind of winning. You watch it because the Giants are your favorite football team, and football is a very, very unique sport. It doesn't happen 82 times a year or 81 times a year. It doesn't happen 162 times a year. It happens once a week for 17 weeks. So that is 17 weeks out of a very, very long year that you have an opportunity to either go to a game, like I do. You have opportunities to go to a football game and forget about your life and just watch whatever happens. Watch your football team, or you get to go home and you get to watch your favorite football team every Sunday and every week and root for them. That's why, because you only have X, Y, Z opportunities, and you could be saying in the moment, "Well, I don't care. I'm not going to watch." The second that it's over, you're going to miss it. The second that it's, or if not even the second that it's over, in the months of May, June, July, and the dead months of the year, you're going to be wanting Giants football on, regardless of whether they're winning or losing. That's why you watch, in my opinion.
All right, there you go. The wise words from Mr. Justin Penik on why you should continue to watch this football team, despite the record that it shows on everything, basically. It's going to be a fun time, a fun Thanksgiving for us. We get to watch Cooper Rush, Tommy DeVito. Absolutely the best. Nothing but the best for us as fans of this team. Thank you, Justin, so much for coming on. Again, you could follow him on Twitter at Justin Penik, Talkin Giants, JM Football, whatever it may be. Justin, thank you so much again for taking the time and coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas. You're the best.